My name is Caroline, but people call me Carrie, and I'm 61 years old. The words that broke me came from my own daughter. She looked me in the eyes with a smile that didn't reach her heart and said, "Now I have a real mother." For a moment I thought I'd misheard her, that perhaps she meant something else, some silly remark that could be brushed aside, but she meant every syllable. My daughter, the child I carried, nursed, and fought for, was telling me I'd been replaced. It wasn't shouted, it wasn't in anger. That almost made it worse. It was delivered calmly, like a final verdict. A lifetime of sacrifices, sleepless nights, and quiet prayers, all dismissed in one line. Humiliation burned through me. I felt smaller than I'd ever felt, as though I was standing outside my own life watching someone else tear it apart. And that was the moment I knew something had shifted forever. I suppose to understand how deep that wound cut, you'd need to know the life I'd built before it all started to unravel. I wasn't perfect, but I was steady. I worked for years as a secretary at a small law office in town, the kind of place where you knew everyone's name and brought in biscuits for tea breaks. My husband Richard passed away 10 years ago, leaving me with a house we'd scraped and saved to buy. It wasn't grand, but it was ours, a solid brick semi-detached with a little garden out back where I grew roses he used to love. After his death, I made that house my fortress, every creaky floorboard a reminder of us. My daughter Amelia grew up there. I still remember her little shoes by the door, her laughter echoing down the hall. I poured my life into making sure she felt safe, loved, and seen. Daily life after Richard was simple but full. I'd wake early, boil the kettle, and drink my tea by the kitchen window, looking at the roses. On Saturdays I'd go to Tesco, picking up groceries and chatting with the same cashier who'd worked there for years. Sundays meant roast chicken, even if it was just for the two of us. Holidays were a patchwork of family traditions, stockings hung at Christmas, birthday cakes made from scratch, candles glowing on the dining table. These things might sound ordinary, but they were the fabric of my life. And tucked into that fabric were little symbols of meaning. There was the silver locket Richard gave me when Amelia was born. Inside was her baby photo on one side, his picture on the other. I wore it almost every day, a reminder of where we started. Then there was the deed to the house, kept carefully in a folder in the drawer of my bedside table. Richard had been clear. The house was to remain in my name until the day I was gone, then passed down as part of Amelia's inheritance. Those papers weren't just ink and signatures. They were security, the legacy he'd entrusted me to protect. But there were small signs, looking back, that Amelia's heart had shifted. She became enamored with another woman, an older friend she'd met through her job. At first I thought it was harmless, that she'd found a mentor. Amelia spoke glowingly of her, comparing her cooking, her style, even her advice. I brushed it aside, telling myself it was natural for grown daughters to admire others. Still, a flicker of unease stayed with me. When she praised this woman's meals while picking at my Sunday roast, when she admired her jewelry while ignoring the locket around my neck, I felt invisible. I told myself not to take it personally. But maybe I should have. Maybe those were the first cracks. The moment everything shattered came on an otherwise ordinary afternoon. Amelia had come by, and we were sitting at the kitchen table, mugs of tea cooling between us. Conversation was stilted, her eyes flitting to her phone more than to me. Then she said it. "Now I have a real mother." My ears rang, my chest tightened, and the room seemed to close in. I asked her what she meant, barely able to get the words out. She shrugged lightly, as if it was no big deal. "She just understands me in ways you never did." She spoke of this woman as though she were blood, while I was some distant acquaintance. I tried to keep my face calm, but inside, something caved in. It wasn't just rejection, it was erasure. After that day, I couldn't let it go. I replayed her words over and over. I tried to convince myself I was overreacting, but then little things began to line up. She started visiting less, her calls grew shorter, her warmth evaporated. When she did come round, her eyes wandered to the family photos on the mantelpiece with a cold detachment, as though they belonged to someone else's story. One evening, after she left, I noticed the drawer of my bedside table wasn't closed properly. I knew I'd left it shut. My heart sank. Inside was the folder with the house deed. I pulled it out, hands trembling, and saw it had been moved. The papers were still there, but the neat stack was disturbed. Then there were her questions. Out of nowhere, she asked about pensions, about the exact wording of Richard's will, about whether I'd ever considered downsizing. They weren't casual queries. They were pointed, persistent. A mother knows when her child's curiosity has an edge to it. I began to feel like I was being studied, assessed, as though I were an obstacle to be managed rather than a person to be loved. I tried to brush it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling. My locket, once her favorite thing to tug at as a little girl, now lay unnoticed around my neck. Instead, she'd gush about the bracelet this other mother had given her. I felt like a shadow in my own daughter's life. The first real crack in her facade came one evening when she thought I was out. I'd returned early from shopping and heard voices through the slightly ajar kitchen door. Amelia was on the phone, her voice sharp, businesslike. "Yes, once the papers are sorted, it'll all be in my name. She won't fight it, she never does." My knees nearly gave out. I pressed myself against the wall, every word a knife. Papers? In her name? My mind flew to the deed, the will, the house. Suddenly, everything made sense. She didn't just want distance. She wanted to take. My daughter, the one I'd raised alone after her father died, was planning to strip me of the very legacy he'd left. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in bed clutching the folder, staring at the ink on those pages as though they could shield me. I remembered Richard's voice when we signed them, his hand squeezing mine. "This is for you, Carrie. Promise me you'll keep it safe." I thought I was protecting it for Amelia's future, but now I realized I had to protect it from her. In the days that followed, Amelia's mask slipped further. She'd drop comments about how much work maintaining the house was, how someone younger could take better care of it. When I pushed back, she'd tilt her head and sigh, as though I were being unreasonable. "Mum, you should be grateful I even keep the family name alive," she said once, the words like acid, as though my existence was something she tolerated, not cherished. She began arriving with documents in hand, pushing them across the table with forced smiles. "Just sign here, it'll make things easier." Easier for who? My hands shook as I pushed them back. The worst was the day she brought the woman she called her real mother into my home. They walked through the rooms like buyers at a viewing, their eyes assessing, measuring, claiming. Amelia laughed with her, pointing out corners of the house as though I weren't even standing there. I clutched my locket so tightly it left a mark on my palm. The deed folder felt like a ticking clock in the drawer upstairs. My voice trembled when I finally asked what they were doing. Amelia's answer was chilling in its casual cruelty. "We're just imagining the future, Mum. Don't worry, you'll be taken care of." The confrontation came not long after. I couldn't stay silent any longer. I laid the deed on the table, the very paper she'd tried to get her hands on. "You want this house? You want everything your father and I built? You'll get none of it, not while I breathe." Her eyes widened, not with shame, but with fury. The woman beside her smirked as though she'd been waiting for this scene. Amelia's words spilled like venom. "You've never been enough for me. She's the one who gave me what I needed. You're just a name." And that was the twist. She didn't want me. She wanted what my name carried. The inheritance, the respectability, the security. She wanted the family name, but none of the love that came with it. In that moment, something inside me hardened. I realized the only way to keep my dignity was to give her exactly what she thought she wanted, just the name, stripped of everything else. I went to a solicitor the next day. I had the will amended, the papers secured. Legally, the house and everything in it would bypass her. She would inherit nothing of substance. Nothing but the bare last name she'd clung to. When the news reached her, she exploded. "You can't do this. I'm your daughter," she screamed. But I had already done it. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "You told me I wasn't your mother. Remember? Now you can live with that truth." In the weeks that followed, silence filled the gaps where her presence used to be. The woman she'd called her real mother drifted away once the money was out of reach. Amelia was left with the shell she'd fought for, the last name, but none of the substance, none of the love, none of the legacy. And me, I reclaim my dignity. I still sit by the kitchen window with my tea, still tend to my roses, still wear my locket with Richard's and Amelia's pictures inside. But now the locket is for me, not for her. Blood isn't always loyalty. A name without love means nothing. I thought losing my daughter's affection was the worst pain I could bear. But I learned that keeping my dignity was worth more than clinging to someone who had already let go of me. My house, my life, my memories remain mine, guarded by the promise Richard made me keep. If you've ever felt the sting of being replaced, of being told you're not enough, know this, you are. You always were. Don't let anyone rewrite your story or strip you of your worth. What would you have done in my place?